Ben Carter stood in the training hall, his palms sweaty and heart-pounding. Around him, the alien soldiers moved with strength and precision, their tall, sleek bodies gliding across the floor like shadows. He tried to follow their movements, to lift the heavy training weights, to keep up with their speed, but every attempt felt like a failure. Beside him, Laura Dunning, his wife, watched with an expression that was all sharp edges and cold amusement. Her eyes, pale blue and bright as ice, studied him as if she were watching a small, clumsy child try to run in armor that was too big. "Come on, Ben," she said, her voice light, but it carried a sting. "Even a beginner alien soldier can lift more than that. How do you even survive as a human?" Ben swallowed hard. He wanted to answer, to defend himself, but he didn't. Years of being humiliated in front of her, and her soldiers had taught him that words would not help. Laura had a way of cutting through confidence like a blade, leaving him silent and small. Around them, the training hall echoed with the sounds of bodies moving, weapons clashing, and the occasional grunt of exertion. Alien soldiers, all taller and stronger than him, moved in synchronized patterns. Ben tried to mimic them, but his movements were awkward, uneven, and far too slow. Every time he stumbled, he felt Laura's eyes on him, sharp and judging. "I don't know why I even try to train with you," she said, shaking her head with a small laugh. "It's embarrassing. I mean, look at you. You're so human." Ben clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. There was a part of him that wanted to snap back, to tell her that strength was not the only thing that mattered. But he didn't. He knew she would laugh harder at him, so he forced himself to focus on the exercises, to push his body as far as it could go. The alien soldiers were noticing him too. They whispered among themselves, some smirking, some shaking their heads. Ben felt their eyes on him like a weight pressing into his back. He felt small, weak, out of place. Laura stepped closer, her hands resting on her hips. "Honestly, Ben, I don't know how I married you. You can't lift, you can't fight, and you can't even move like a normal soldier. You are pathetic." Ben's heart sank at the word. He wanted to disappear, to run away from the laughter and the stares. But he didn't. Somehow, he stayed. He stood taller, even if his shoulders shook. Laura reached out and tapped the side of his arm. Her touch was light, but it felt heavy, like the weight of all her expectations pressing down on him. "Do you even know what it means to survive in this world? Humans are weak. You're weak. And yet, somehow, you're here, standing in front of me." He looked at her, really looked at her. Laura had always been brilliant, strong, fearless. Her life had been built around combat, strategy, and survival in a galaxy that had no place for weakness. She had trained her whole life to be perfect, and in comparison, Ben felt like a mistake. But beneath the fear, beneath the shame, a small spark of determination burned in him. He did not speak, but he thought, "I may be weak, but I am not done yet. I will find a way. I will find a way. I will find a way." The training continued, and Ben's body screamed at him. The weights were heavier than anything he had lifted on Earth. The movements were faster than anything he had practiced. Every step, every strike, every motion made him realize just how far he was from being like the aliens around him. Yet he tried. He pushed forward, ignoring the burning in his muscles and the sting of humiliation. He stumbled. He fell. He missed strikes, but he kept moving. And Laura, watching him, raised an eyebrow. "Are you even trying?" she asked. Her voice was teasing, but there was something sharper underneath. It was curiosity. Surprise. She had never seen him push like this before. She had always assumed he would give up. "I am trying," he said quietly, his voice steady, even though it shook slightly. Laura laughed, soft but full of disbelief. Trying is not enough, Ben. You need more than trying. You need strength, skill, power, things you humans don't have. He nodded. He didn't argue. He knew she was right. He was human. Weak. But he also knew something else. Something Laura could never see if she only looked at muscle and speed. Humans had something the aliens didn't. Ingenuity. Adaptability. Creativity. Patience. And he had a mind that never stopped thinking. As the day went on, Ben noticed small things about the training routines, about the soldiers' movements, about the weaknesses in their formations. Every slip, every misstep, every repeated drill told him something. He began to memorize patterns, calculate angles, and imagine new ways to move and act. The other soldiers laughed at him. Laura, of course, continued to tease him mercilessly. "I can't believe I married someone who can't even hold a basic weapon properly," she said, shaking her head. "You're lucky I have a soft spot for humans." Ben felt a mix of frustration and determination. He would show her. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. He would show her. That night, when the training hall was empty and the alien soldiers had returned to their quarters, Ben sat alone. He touched the scratches on his arms, the bruises on his legs, the cuts on his hands. Every mark was a reminder of failure, but also a reminder of effort. He pulled out a small hollow pad he had hidden in his quarters. On it were diagrams, notes, and calculations he had made during the day. He studied the alien movements, their tactics, their training routines. Slowly, methodically, he began to plan. Laura entered quietly, watching him from the doorway. Her expression was unreadable. "You're still at it," she said. Ben didn't look up. "I'm learning," he said simply. Laura crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "You know, I don't know why I keep bothering with you. Humans, they just can't survive here. You'll never be like us." Ben finally looked up, meeting her gaze. "Maybe not," he said softly. "But I can survive in my own way. For, I'm munning this. I'm sombred for part. Days. And 7 the days. I'm munning the 7 the days. A life to meeting the days. I'm munning the days. Meeting the days." Laura raised an eyebrow. "You think?" Ben nodded. "I know." There was a pause. Laura studied him, as if trying to read his mind, to see if he was lying. And for the first time, she saw something in him she hadn't noticed before. Not strength, not skill, but something else. Determination. A quiet, stubborn, unyielding force. She shook her head and smiled faintly, almost reluctantly. "We'll see, Ben. We'll see." And Ben, alone in the quiet hall, allowed himself a small, secret smile. But he would rise. He would endure. And one day, Laura and the galaxy would see what a human could do. For now, he sat and studied, learning every detail he could. Every motion, every weakness, every chance. And he knew, deep inside, that even if he was weak today, he would never be defeated tomorrow. The morning came with a strange stillness. Ben Carter was in the workshop, checking some equipment, when the alarm blared. The base shook slightly, and red lights flashed across the walls. Alien soldiers shouted orders, their voices sharp and urgent. Laura Dunning rushed past him, her face tense, her pale blue eyes wide with concern. "Ben, stay here," she commanded. "This is no place for humans. Go to the safe zone." Ben shook his head. "No, I'm coming with you. I can help." Laura's expression hardened. "You? Help? You're weak. You can't fight. Go to the shelter now." Ben ignored her. He grabbed a toolkit and a small weapon, not for strength, but for his mind. He didn't have the muscles of the alien soldiers, but he had something else: brains, planning, and speed of thought. The base doors opened to a scene of chaos. The ground outside trembled as the enemy ships descended. They were massive, black vessels that seemed to blot out the sky. Thousands of alien warriors spilled from them, moving with terrifying precision. They were stronger, faster, and more deadly than anything the base had faced before. Laura ran to the front lines, her soldiers forming ranks. Ben followed cautiously, staying behind her, observing everything. He noticed the patterns in the enemy's movement, the way they spread, the gaps in their ranks. His mind raced. "Formation Delta is weak on the left," he shouted to a nearby officer. "If you move your troops there, they can hold them." The officer looked at him, shocked. "Human, how do you know that?" Ben didn't answer. He was already scanning, calculating. The first wave of the enemy crashed against the defenses. Alien soldiers met them head-on, their weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. The ground shook with the impact. Laura fought fiercely, her blade moving like lightning, cutting through enemies with skill and precision. Ben stayed back, watching, thinking. He saw the traps the aliens had set. They were strong, yes, but predictable. With small adjustments, they could be used to his advantage. He ran to the supply room, grabbed containers of explosive chemicals, wires, and tools, and began working quickly. He set small traps near the walls, rigged the energy barriers to overload at key points, and placed decoys where he expected the enemy to attack next. Every action was precise, careful, and calculated. Laura noticed him moving through the battlefield, not charging like a soldier, but placing devices, adjusting barriers, and redirecting fire. She frowned. "Ben, get out of here. This is dangerous." "I know what I'm doing," he yelled back. "Trust me." For the first time, she hesitated. She saw the focus in his eyes, the calmness in the middle of chaos. She realized he was not panicking. He was thinking, and thinking fast. The second wave of enemy soldiers arrived, larger and stronger than the first. They moved like a single organism, attacking with precision and coordination. Laura met them with her soldiers, but she noticed they were being funneled, unknowingly, into the traps Ben had set. Small explosions erupted, barriers overloaded, and alien soldiers fell in confusion. Laura's eyes widened. What is he doing?" She saw Ben moving like a shadow, dodging attacks with skill, setting traps, and pulling levers. He wasn't strong, but he was clever. Every move forced the enemy to make mistakes, and those mistakes were costing them. The battle raged on for hours. The aliens pushed forward, but Ben's traps, his planning, and his quick thinking slowed them down. He used the terrain, the base's systems, and even the enemy's confidence against them. A bridge collapsed just as the enemy tried to cross it. Energy cannons fired in a pattern he predicted, hitting the advancing soldiers at the perfect moment. Laura fought harder than ever. She saw the soldiers who had mocked Ben watching him in awe. Even the elite officers were confused and unsure how a single human could cause so much disruption. In a moment of quiet, Ben glanced at the enemy commander, a massive alien with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. He was issuing commands, but Ben noticed a hesitation, a flaw in the pattern of attack. Using this, he quickly rerouted some of the energy barriers and triggered a chain reaction. The result was spectacular. Part of the enemy formation was trapped, and their numbers were cut significantly. Soldiers fell, weapons were destroyed, and confusion spread. The alien army had not expected such cunning from a human. Laura ran to his side, finally recognizing the truth. "Ben, you're amazing," she shouted over the chaos. Ben shook his head. "I'm not amazing. I'm just thinking. That's all humans do." Laura stared at him, breathless. She had mocked him, laughed at him, and doubted him for so long. And now, in the middle of battle, she realized she had been wrong. Humans were not strong like aliens. They were clever, adaptable, and fearless in ways aliens could not understand. The enemy commander roared, frustrated by the repeated failures. He sent in more soldiers, but Ben anticipated their every move. Using small channels, control panels, and barriers, he redirected them again and again, weakening their ranks. A small group of alien soldiers surrounded him, thinking they could take him out. Ben smiled faintly and pulled a lever, activating a trap above them. A cage dropped, trapping the soldiers inside. The commander bellowed in anger, unable to adjust fast enough. Laura joined him, fighting alongside him, and together they formed a strange but effective team. She led the soldiers with strength. He guided the battle with brains. Step by step, they pushed back the enemy. As the sun began to set, the battlefield was littered with defeated enemy soldiers. Smoke rose from damaged ships and burning barriers. The alien soldiers of Laura's army looked at Ben with a new respect, some even whispering among themselves. Laura approached him, her face unreadable. I thought humans were weak," she admitted softly. Ben wiped sweat from his brow, his hands dirty, but his eyes steady. "We are different," he said. "Not stronger. Not faster. But we find ways to survive. And sometimes, survive better than strength alone." Laura studied him. "I mocked you, Ben. I called you feeble. I was wrong." He shook his head. "It's okay. You didn't know. Now you do." The enemy commander retreated, realizing that his army was losing not because of brute force, but because of a human they had underestimated. The base was safe for now, but Ben knew this was only the beginning. There would be more battles, more enemies, and more challenges. But for the first time, Laura and the others saw that a human could change the course of a fight, even against overwhelming odds. That night, after the battle, Ben sat quietly. He cleaned his small weapon, repaired damaged traps, and reviewed the battle in his mind. Every move, every decision, every reaction was analyzed. He was learning, improving, and preparing. Laura came to him again, her eyes soft now, no longer cold. "You were incredible today," she said. Ben looked at her and smiled faintly. "I just used what I know. That's all. We. Cross. 7. No," she said, shaking her head. "You used what humans have that we never expected. Courage. Thinking. Creativity. You fought an army alone. And you won." Ben nodded. He didn't need praise. He had proven it. Not just to Laura, but to himself. Humans might look weak, but when the moment came, they could be strong in ways the galaxy would never expect. Laura stood beside him, watching the stars rise above the battlefield. "I will never doubt you again, Ben Carter," she said quietly. Ben smiled, feeling a quiet pride he had never known. "And I will never stop learning, Laura Dunning. We have a long war ahead, and humans are ready." For the first time, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel weak. He felt like a human. And in that moment, that was enough. The battlefield was quiet in the early morning, but Ben Carter could feel tension in the air. The enemy had retreated, but he knew they were not gone for good. They were intelligent, organized, and dangerous. Laura Dunning moved among her soldiers, checking weapons, giving orders, and watching the horizon. Ben stayed behind her, quietly observing, thinking. "Ben," Laura said, her voice low, "you don't have to follow me into this. You've already helped more than anyone expected." He shook his head. "I'm not done yet. They'll come back, and when they do, We need a plan. I can help more, if I act now. Laura studied him, seeing the determination in his eyes. For the first time, she felt a mix of respect and worry. You really think you can fight them alone? I don't need to fight them like you do, Ben said. I need to trick them, slow them down, confuse them. That's how humans survive. Laura frowned. It sounds risky. Ben smiled faintly. Everything about war is risky. But I've learned something the aliens haven't. They rely on strength. I rely on thinking. The enemy returned before sunset. Hundreds of soldiers poured out of their ships, their black armor glinting in the dying light. They moved quickly, confident, as if the human and alien defenders could not stop them. Laura's soldiers lined up, weapons ready, and she took her place at the front. Ben stayed slightly behind, observing every movement, noting every formation, every gap. He didn't move with strength or speed. He moved with thought. Every step had a reason. The enemy advanced. They were faster, stronger, and better armed. Laura's soldiers fired, cutting some of them down, but more kept coming. The battlefield became chaos again. Ben acted. He ran toward an abandoned supply depot and began rigging it. Using the few resources, he had wires, energy cells, small explosives. He prepared a trap. He did not need to fight the army directly. He needed to manipulate them, create confusion, and use their own confidence against them. A group of enemy soldiers approached him, moving carefully, their weapons raised. Ben ducked behind crates, pulling a lever. A section of the floor gave way, dropping the soldiers into a deep pit. He ran along the side, setting more traps as the enemy spread across the area. From a distance, Laura watched him with a mix of awe and disbelief. He's doing it again, she whispered to one of her officers. He's taking on hundreds of soldiers. Alone. Ben continued moving. He noticed patterns in the enemy's formation and predicted where they would go next. Using small barricades and energy fields, he redirected their movement. Some fell into traps, some were delayed by collapsed walkways, and others collided with each other in confusion. The enemy commander roared in frustration. He had faced many enemies before, but none like this. A single human was controlling the battlefield, unseen, unpredictable, and clever. Ben ducked into a narrow corridor, where he had set a series of small traps that could trigger the ceiling to fall in sections. He waited, listening to the sounds of the approaching soldiers. When they reached the corridor, he activated the mechanism. The ceiling collapsed, blocking the path and scattering the enemy. He ran quickly to the next area. There, he noticed a squad moving toward the main gate, intending to destroy the barriers protecting Laura's forces. He thought quickly. Using energy cells and wiring from the nearby supply rooms, he created a diversion. A loud explosion erupted, drawing the squad away and giving Laura's soldiers time to regroup. The enemy commander became furious. He sent more soldiers. But Ben anticipated every movement. He was not fighting with brute force. He was fighting with mind, predicting, planning, and adapting faster than the aliens could adjust. Laura finally joined him in the corridor. Ben, you're amazing, she shouted. How are you doing all this alone? Ben didn't answer immediately. He pulled a small lever, opening a hidden hatch above the corridor. I'm using what humans have, he said finally. Brains, creativity, and patience. Laura looked around, seeing the traps, the fallen enemy soldiers, and the carefully manipulated battlefield. She realized the truth. Humans could not compete with aliens in strength, but they could outthink them. And that could be just as deadly. They moved together, a strange team of human and alien. Laura with her strength, Ben with his mind. They disrupted the enemy's attacks, slowed their advances, and created confusion among their ranks. Every enemy mistake was a result of Ben's planning, and every success for Laura's soldiers was guided by him. The sun set, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Smoke rose from the traps, the fallen soldiers, and the damaged machinery. Ben moved quickly, efficiently, quietly. He was not a soldier in the traditional sense. He was a strategist, a controller of chaos. The enemy commander, seeing his forces fail repeatedly, decided to act personally. He moved into the battlefield, a massive figure with glowing red eyes, issuing commands and attacking anyone who came near. He was strong, fast, and skilled, but Ben had already prepared for him. Ben led the commander into a narrow corridor filled with traps. The commander moved cautiously, but the human had anticipated every step. A sudden trap immobilized the commander's legs, and another cut off his escape route. For the first time, the commander realized that he could be outsmarted by a human. Laura joined Ben, fighting side by side. She swung her blade, keeping the remaining enemy soldiers away, while Ben manipulated the environment to disable the commander's strength. Together, they were unstoppable. The commander roared in frustration and ordered a retreat. His soldiers followed, confused and demoralized. The battlefield was theirs. Ben finally stood in the center, breathing heavily, his body exhausted but his mind sharp. Laura approached him, her face pale but smiling. "I can't believe it," she said. "You fought an army, alone." Ben shook his head. "I didn't fight them like you do. I used what I know. Humans survive with brains, not just strength. That's all. Thanks for watching. And reline the long. I hope in 5. Laura looked at him with new respect. "I mocked you, called you weak. I was wrong. You're incredible." Ben smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter. What matters is surviving, winning, and learning. That's what humans do." The alien soldiers who had mocked him before now looked at him differently. They whispered, stared, and some even nodded in approval. Ben Carter, the human, had proven that he could not only survive but control the battlefield in ways they could not imagine. Laura stood beside him, her hand brushing his shoulder. "I will never underestimate you again, Ben. Not now. Not ever." Ben nodded. "Good. We have a lot to prepare for. They will return, stronger, smarter, but so will we." That night, after the battle, Ben and Laura sat together, looking at the stars. The battlefield below was quiet, but the war was far from over. Ben cleaned his small weapon, repaired the traps, and reviewed the battlefield in his mind. Every step he had taken, every decision, every action, was remembered, analyzed, and improved. Laura watched him, silently realizing the truth she had ignored for so long. Humans might not be the strongest, but they were clever, adaptable, and relentless when it mattered most. Ben looked at her. "I will keep learning, keep preparing. And when the next attack comes, we will be ready. Humans are not weak, Laura. We survive, we fight, we win, in ways no one expects." Laura nodded. "And I will fight beside you, Ben. Not because you need me, but because together, we are unstoppable." Ben smiled. For the first time, he felt truly proud. Not for strength, not for skill, but for what humans could do with brains, courage, and determination. He knew the enemy would return. They would bring more soldiers, more weapons, more strategy. But he was ready. And now, Laura and the rest of the soldiers were ready too. They had learned a lesson the hard way. Never underestimate a human. And Ben Carter, the weak human, had just begun to show the galaxy what humans were capable of.